That sounded like a roulette wheel going around there for a minute.
I think if you put your hand on the space bar,
Okay,
that'll
we're
happen.
on there. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Boak, the chairman of the Kennebunkport Planning Board. This is a virtual planning board meeting. We're having Zoom conferencing format. The agenda is on the town website, has the information needed to participate. It is Zoom webinar 961-3650-7095. You can dial in by phone at 929-205-6099. If you're conferencing in by phone and watching on cable, if you end up online talking on this, make sure you mute the turn down the volume on the TV set. Anyway, as it says, you can always watch on channel 1301 or YouTube Kennebunkport Television. During the meeting, only the planning board and the current participant will be selected by the board to be on screen with audio connected. All others will be blacked out or audio muted except when the board solicits public input. If a public hearing is on the agenda, as the first item tonight, an applicant or board members will first make discussions, after which I will open the public hearing. At that time, anyone who wishes to be heard can raise their hand in Zoom, and those will be recognized in turn. If you are using a telephone connecting, raise your hand is *6 and toggling mute is *9. So for starters, I'm going to take attendance. It looks like we're all here, but I'm going to just call the names out for completeness. So I'm here, Tom. Nina?
Here.
Scott?
Yes.
Ed?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
George?
Here.
And John?
Here.
Okay, so minutes. We have minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Everybody look at them, read them, love them to pieces.
Very good.
Oh, when Larry doesn't have a correction, it's a major event. So you want to make a motion there, Larry?
So I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor. Nina,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Okay. So that brings us to what is probably the only item tonight, but it's the first item. It's 210201 Kennebunkport Captain's Collection doing business as Mainstay Inn, Sebago Techniques authorized agent. And I want to bring in Steve Doe, and he may want to bring in someone else too, but we want to bring in Steve Doe for starters.
Okay, I'm promoting Steve now.
Yeah, if you could also bring in, if Rob Blood is out there, that'd be great.
Promoting Rob now.
Hi, everybody.
You're Rob.
Good evening.
Okay, so Steve, I guess the floor is yours. You've sent us a new set of drawings with some changes.
Yep, if I can share my screen, I can pull those up and go over what the changes were.
You should be able to share.
All right. All right, I assume you can see this? Maybe it's taken a while.
Yep.
All right, so this is the landscape plan. I pulled this up because I know there was questions from multiple neighbors on the project, so I pulled this up to kind of talk through it. So since the last, well, I'll kind of go over the project for the abutters, and then I'll talk about the change that we made. So currently, as you enter the site over here, this is all parking in front of the cottages. There's really no green space at all. And what the goal of this is to make this more of a passive, quiet area. Little garden areas in front of each of the cottages, and really remove cars from the site of everything that's, kind of makes up the project here. And so what we've done is there's 18 spaces on site. And so we've created a parking lot over here, and then we've retained 2 spaces over here. One of these has been made into an ADA space, which was brought up at the last meeting. Another item that came up is that we had accounted for some parking over here on Main Street. There's some signs out there that says, Main stay in parking. Werner looked into it, and there's nothing in the town records that allow the mainstay to have those spaces. So we can't count those. So consequently, we had to add some parking spaces in our lot. So we've added 2 spaces right here. We shifted the walkway that used to be right here, and we've shoved it down to here. So you can still access from this parking lot down some steps and then into the site over here. There was concerns from several neighbors. I know this gentleman over here, I believe, had some concerns about, I think he had 3 items. One was stormwater runoff. And in our stormwater report, we talk about net decreases and net increases on runoff. So there's 2 watersheds on this property. And I hope I don't bore you with this, but I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit more for his benefit. So essentially the majority of this site, and I'm just going to kind of outline. So if we look from along the street, across here, down across these cottages, kind of splitting the roof, all of this, everything within this space drains internally to the site. And currently there's a catch basin right about here, and this whole site drained to that location. And with this all being pavement, it all ran to that catch basin fairly quickly. And then it got into an enclosed drainage system, and it comes out, and then it comes down into Main Street and continues down into Dock Square into an enclosed drainage system. Everything outside of that area, so like everything kind of in this area, drains off-site. So he's concerned about drainage on his land. We have changed some of the drainage off-site, like some of these garden areas, which is now pavement, is going to flow this direction. But essentially, we're not changing the drainage pattern off-site to his property. We're not increasing it, we're not decreasing it any. Internally, we are increasing pavement area by about 2,000 square feet, but the net runoff on the property is actually less than what it is today. And I'm just going to open up the stormwater management report, and maybe I can't because it's not opening for me. But anyway, in the stormwater management report, there's a summary, and you probably have this in your packets. On page 4, which is the last page in the report, at the top of that, it talks about peak rate runoff. And there's 3 columns in that. It talks about the storm event. It talks about existing conditions. And then it has post conditions. Post conditions being the developed site after we're done. And you'll see these numbers like, for instance, a 2-year storm in the existing condition is 1.9 CFS, cubic feet per second of runoff. In the proposed condition, it's 1.8. So if you look down the numbers, it's in almost, well, in every category in the what's called POA1, which is the internal part of the site, there's a net reduction in all those numbers and all the 3 storm events. POA2 is the watershed that goes off-site. And you'll see there's no changes in those as a result of this. And the reason there's a reduction on site is because where everything was pavement, we've now added a lot of gardening spaces, and we've reduced the ability of the water to run off the site in a very quick manner. With the walkways and planting beds, it's slowing the water getting off the site so it has a chance to percolate into the ground or have a longer route to get to the drainage structures. So that's one item that he had. The other question he had was regarding fencing and landscaping. And so, and I'll just zoom in to the plan. Currently, there's a fence that's in this location here. We are going to replace a fence between these units. And then we have some evergreen plants in this area as well. Over in this area, we have quite a variety of plantings in there. Rhododendrons, clethras, and some blueberry bushes. And then down in this area, this is where the dumpster is. We have some more arborvitaes in this location. So we've improved the screening that's in that location. I think he had one more. Oh, the fire pits. So the last one he had was the fire pits. So each cottage is equipped with a little patio area, which is this circle for each cottage. And in there's a little fire pit, which is the smaller circle. All the cottages are going to be equipped with a gas fired fireplace. That was worked out with the fire chief. He was concerned about fire pits being close to the cottages and having open flames from a wood perspective. So all of those will be gas. We have 4 other locations, one here, 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 and here. One of these will be a wood fired, but the other 3 will be gas. We haven't decided which one will be wood, but one of those is anticipated to be a wood fireplace. The fire chief just wants that to be 40 feet from the building, and all of these are 40 feet from buildings. So, so that was the abutter to the over here. There was concerns about the abutter, I believe, over here, concerned about seeing the parking lot. What we have along the street side is we planted a hedgerow of arborvitaes that essentially is going to enclose the whole front of the end property, so you will not see the parking lot. Other than what is seen at the driveway opening. Right now, there is no buffering over here. We're going to add some evergreens or some ornamental grass. I'm sure they'll have some other comments. This neighbor over here, I think, was also concerned about the parking lot. Currently, there's several large shade trees on this side. This one and this one are 2 very large Norway maples, or Norway spruces. Our original plan was to just keep the existing vegetation in there. If they have concerns about the views, I had talked to Rob, and he's willing to either add some additional screening, whether it's in vegetation or a fence. I think if we put a fence in, we'd probably want it to run along this line just to the edge of the parking lot to screen those vehicles from their view. The only other thing I want to discuss is our parking calculations is based on, and I think I'll go to sheet 1. Zoom out a bit. The site plan has the parking counts. So the parking counts existing on site is 18 spaces. We're required 1 space per sleeping room. So there's 17 sleeping rooms. That's 17 spaces. 4 employees, which 1 space per 2 employees equals 2. So we're required to have 19 spaces. And we don't have 8. We don't have 19. We have 18, which is what's existing on site. So we'd be asking for some leniency on that if we could keep the 18. To get the 18 would require additional tree removal, and we really would hate to do that. The only place we could add parking would be back in here, and there's some fairly large trees in this location. We really would not like to remove those if possible for that 1 additional space. So that's all I have to update you. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has
Steve,
on this.
Steve, this is Ed. Can I jump in on the parking? You say that there are an existing 18 spaces, right?
Correct.
Didn't that include the street parking?
It did not.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, let me go.
I think there's an argument to be made here that as this is a grandfathered installation, both, that the number of spaces that needs to be met is what was already there, not necessarily how many are calculated per the land use ordinance algorithm. If there's a difference between the two. You had 18 before, I think you need 18 now.
So it would be listed as a non-compliance that's grandfathered, that they're not making any worse.
That's what I would offer.
All right.
Does that
means
help? Would that resolve this issue, or am I missing the point?
No, I think
It
that's
helps me. I'd leave it up to the board to decide
Yeah.
that, but
Well, I would view it that way for one. I'd be interested what others would say.
okay. My biggest question is item 7.7D.
Okay.
The total area of motel, hotel, bed and breakfast or in buildings, plus total area of parking spaces and driveways taken together shall not exceed 1/3 of the total area of the lot in the case of single-story buildings, nor exceed 1/4 of the area of the lot in the case of two-story buildings. Now, this is multi-story. The one building is multi-story. So I believe that it really depends on certain things, but I did some rough calculations, and I think the old version is using roughly 32%, and that's my own just estimating it, okay? And your new one, depending on whether you count fire lanes as driveways and parking. If you count fire lanes as driveways and parking, you're over 40% and in trouble. So I guess I really need to see those numbers calculated from your plans, not from my fiddling around with a ruler.
nope. So here's the numbers. Existing parking area is 11,381. Proposed parking lot is 7,289. So the net reduction in the parking lot of 4,000 square feet. That does not count walkways,
Okay.
because walkways are not included in that.
It specifically
It says
says
parking
driveways
areas.
and parking areas.
Steve,
Yes.
Steve, the
I
fire
accept.
lane is planted, correct? And
Correct.
impervious or pervious?
The only thing pervious is the path, the footpath through that. So the rest is vegetated.
So
You mean
You're-
I'm sorry, this is pervious here,
Okay, but not the path.
not the path. And I would not say that's a driveway. I would say that's a fire lane. Fire lanes can be all grass in some instances.
okay. All right, so you have the numbers, and what did you say the new number was on
Oops.
on your parking lot?
So the new number is 7,289 square feet.
Okay,
But you're
Yeah.
talking about a reduction. Well, how is it as compared to the rest of the property itself? Because it may not have been conforming in the first place. I don't know.
Well, they're currently, it's 11,381 square feet of parking.
Right.
That's there, not there.
right.
So
He's
we-
making, I think you're
Reducing it,
still be
but how does it
still
compare
be
to the overall
non-conforming, but you're making yourself less non-conforming.
Correct.
Okay,
What's the percentage, Steve? Do we know, what's the lot versus coverage in terms of percentage coverage now?
I don't think I have the buildings counted, so I really don't know what that is.
7907, you said somewhere.
Thomas, do you know what the total coverage you had was in your calculation?
My calculation, it was about 30%. But I didn't use his new number. I did notice that 7,200 number. So
If we're reducing it by 4,000 square feet, we're
It's
probably
like
down below 30%.
it's under 30, but it's, let me just quickly calculate it here. So it's 1,100 divided by 52,272 is 28%. So it's better than it was, but not 25%.
and that's including the ADA space?
If it's included
Yes.
in that number that he just told me, yes.
Yes.
So it's better. But it's supposed to be 25%. It's another case of making it somewhat, making the less non-compliant than it was to begin with, which is a good thing.
But still not compliant.
But still not compliant. Well, I mean, hell, it's got, if you look at 7.7, it's supposed to have 40-foot boundaries around it with no, and it's got buildings right on the sidelines. So clearly we're not going, it's clearly non-compliant in a bunch of ways. But it's because they're making it less non-compliant, which is always the goal when working with plans like this.
Yes, it is.
But we're going to document that. Scott will make sure that's carefully documented in the finding of facts, that it's still non-compliant, but less non-compliant. Okay, well, that was the main thing I wanted to go over. So, Nina, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. When I first saw this plan, the fire pits bothered me. And so I went down to take a look at the site as I remembered it. And it was even more serious than I remembered it because, this is a non-conforming use in a village residential area. And I have to agree with one of the abutters who wrote in and said that, this could be very disconcerting to an abutter, and they're very close by. It's not a campground, and to have fire pits and have people sitting around wood fire and so forth, they tend to stay up late when they're on vacation, hang around, they can be a little bit loud, laughing, cheering, sometimes drunk, sometimes not, if everybody were to use the fire pit at once, I can see how odors might drift into village, residential houses and be bothersome to them. So I'm going to say right now that I have a problem with putting fire pits in there at all.
Nina, what is we're proposing a singular wood burning fire pit and the rest are gas, which give off no odor.
Right.
Most of the gas fire pits are around the cabins, which have a 2-person occupancy limit. So there's very little risk of multiple people gathering around the private fire pits.
That is true.
I have to disagree with that. What if people rent out a wedding party and they rent out all the cabins for the weekend?
That's right. That's right. But, even with gas fireplaces, odors, somebody puts on a steak with barbecue sauce or something, those odors drift.
They're not they're not grills. They're a fire pit, like a, maybe Steve, I don't know if Steve, you can find an image or something, but they're like a little campfire, but gas. So they're not for cooking. They're for heat and ambiance.
Okay, so you've got people sitting around. You've got those little fire pits close to the edge of the property, and you've got neighbors right next door. Yeah, as I said, what's bothering me about this is it's not a campground. It's non-conforming, and it's in a village residential area. And that bothers me a lot. I think that's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a problem for code enforcement if we put any limitations in there. I just don't see where it's necessary to have those in there. I mean, it's very nice if you were in an area that was wide open. You've done a lovely job of design, but I don't think it'll work in the residential area you're at.
We actually have fire pits at both Captain Fairfield Inn and Captain Lord Mansion, and we've never had any problem with neighbors or abutters.
Okay, well, some of these abutters say that you might have a problem there. And you've got a lot of cabins there. You've got 5 cabins plus an inn.
Hey, Nina, can I just clarify, and to the point that there are fire pits at the other properties, I thought those were 1 or 2 centralized fire pits, more on the line of what you have in the center here. Here, what Nina's describing is the proliferation of fire pits. I don't know how many are there in total?
Edward, so there would be 11 individual fire pits, 1 for each of the units in the cabins,
And then 4.
and then 4 in the middle. And one of the things I'd like to point out to the board is that the maximum occupancy of this property is 34 people. And my perspective on this, and I certainly respect that you may disagree with this, is that more creates less concentration and less central activity. So we purposefully placed 4 smaller fire pits in the center of the property so that we won't have large groups gathering around them, but we're creating small private conversation areas that are pretty well protected through vegetation and screening. But again, with Captain Lord, we have a 40-person occupancy limit there. We have a central fire pit that backs up to an immediate abutter.
One fire pit, right?
The fire pit backs up, and with Captain Fairfield, we have 2 fire pits that abuts John and Norma's house, excuse me, that is shielded by a row of arborvitae. And again, that was a concern of theirs when we put them in, and through sort of good innkeeping, we have made sure that it hasn't been a realized concern.
And those are wood?
No, they're gas. Edward.
Those are gas, okay.
They are.
Okay, well, that's one of the things that it depends on good innkeeping, and it depends on some limitations. Like, was said, suppose you have a wedding party in there. They're all going to gather around 1 wood fire or 1 fire pit, and they can be very loud and can be very noisy. You've got a lot of abutters around there. So
We do.
I just want to say, before you get defensive again, okay, I just want to say, maybe 1 fire pit would be acceptable to the neighborhood. Maybe it wouldn't, but I think all those little fire pits really bother me. And that site, it's not a campground, and it's a non-conforming use. So it's specialized, you're grandfathered in there, but there's a reason that's a non-conforming use in a village residential zone. And I'm concerned that, even a couple of times during the summer, if somebody has to go down there, or the residents are really, really bothered, couldn't sleep or something like that, I don't think that's fair to the residents. Let me go on to another subject that's near and dear to my heart. and it's possible, you know, some others will pipe in on this. When I looked at the elevation of where you want to put that parking lot and that you want to make that area level, it really bothered me. One, that will definitely affect some of those stately old trees in there. There's no question about it. Whether you have an impervious or a pervious surface or not, I really am against elevating that much. That's a real dip over there. And I really am against bringing that up that far. I don't know whether it will change the situation on the neighbors. I think some of them have been concerned about that. But I think that will change some of the situation for some of those older trees. I have no problem with, you know, the parking lot being where it is per se on the design. Excuse me, even though it's closer to the street, because I think you can shield it very easily. So I don't have a problem with sight at all, but I have a problem with elevating that area. I'm wondering if you can take that parking lot and bring it down to the elevation where it is now.
The reason, if I can just chime in on that, the reason I elevated it, Nina, is because I don't want to excavate the soil out of that area. All the tree roots, and all the tree roots are in this, you know, consume this whole area. And if I put that into all those roots, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm doing is we're just scraping off the loam and then filling on top of that. I am scheduled to meet with Nate Tucker from Bartlett Tree. I was trying to get out there tomorrow with him to look at this specifically. As you know, he's the arborist that works in the town. So I'm going to engage him and try to see what his concerns are and how we can work through, you know, those trees, because those trees are pretty important to us as well.
So I wasn't here last meeting, but reading the minutes, Nina recommended that you all meet with the Shade Tree Committee. Did that happen?
I got in contact with the tree warden. Yes, I was hoping he could meet out there with me. Haven't heard back from him as of yet. One of the things he does want to do is they want to add a shade tree in this location, which we've agreed to. But anyway, I'm still waiting to hear from him. Because there is, well, these two trees are tagged. And then right here is an elm tree that's tagged.
Yeah,
There was a tree here that was removed.
and some of those trees as well.
I'm sorry, was that Nina?
There are easements on some of those trees.
Yes, so these three, I'm sure, are probably easements.
Well, I don't think the town trees would be easements. But the ones
Well-
on the property, there's a question about whether they're in the town right of way or not, I suppose.
Yeah, these two are on the property, these two here, and then this in the elm.
Those are my concerns, and unless that's resolved, you know, where I can see that the trees are not going to be harmed, I have an issue with the parking lot that way. And as I said before, I have an issue with fire pits being in there.
Okay. Ed, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Scott, you're the Stuckey, so what do you have? Anything?
Good. So if you can move that picture down a little, Steve. Okay, perfect. So along the lines that everyone's speaking about, from the abutters, it seems they're really nervous about, obviously, the fire pits and what could be, just turn into kind of a party place, just because you've got so many fire pits. I'm concerned where you own 4 properties. The Fairfield Inn you mentioned, and the Captain Lord Mansion. Now you own Lord Jeffords Inn. If this is highly successful, and then of course, meaning this, your vacancy is very high because this maybe becomes more of a party place instead of more of a family place. I'm nervous about it being prolific to the other properties, and I'm a little bit far away, but I am close to being in a butter because I'm on the on the bottom of Green Street and Ocean. So I am concerned with that. Even if you had one central like you do at your other properties, I think that would take a lot of tension off because they've been successful at the other properties. Let me just move on to the parking lot. One of the abutters was talking about just the sound of and the unsightliness of a parking lot there. And so I just wanted to ask you, you're going from left to right, because I can't see the north, but if you're on Main Street, you're looking left to right. What is that proposed new hedge row of bushes? Could you just define what those are, the size they'll be when they go in, and how tall they grow?
Yep. So along the front, all along here, and then over here are arborvitaes. And let me see the plant list on here somewhere.
So Steve, just a quick question while you're doing that. I thought your arrow would be up by Main Street to kind of the look of that parking lot, so they wouldn't see it as much.
Scott,
Guess
the
I'm
only
not
thing that
following
you're
you.
going to see on Main Street is the entry to the parking lot.
Here.
The rest will be screened by 10 to 12-foot arborvitae.
Okay, and that's what I was asking about. Excellent. Then how about along the wall, along the property line from Main Street, on the right side from Main Street going back? Yes.
Yeah, currently we don't have plantings, but as I talked about in my first presentation, because of the neighbor here concerned, we could continue the arborvitae hedge down along that way, or we can put up a fence.
Yeah, I don't think they would like that too much. I mean, the first one sounds great.
We're happy to add more natural screening there.
I hope appease the neighbors, 'cause it sounds like a beautiful fence in front and along that line.
Scott, may I just take a moment and talk a little bit about the fire pits, because I understand the concern. And also I want to talk about the nature of this property. Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
Just as a starting point, we operate and own 30 hotels that are all in residential neighborhoods. We make our living on being good neighbors to the people who abut us, from Nantucket to Martha's Vineyard to Kennebunkport. And we understand the nature of residential neighborhoods because of that. And certainly priority goes to being good neighbors and existing within the ecosystem of the neighborhoods we're in. Part of the charm of staying at one of our hotels is that you are of the neighbors. You're in a neighborhood and you're not separate from it. And so we're particularly sensitive to those things. This is a luxury property. It's a property that caters towards couples. The rates are very high. And so it's not a party property. It's not a spring break property. It's not a rowdy property in any way. it's a romantic retreat for couples. And we like the number of fire pits because it allows people to have private space to relax as partners. It's not, and I understand Nina's concern about whether we, one or two weekends of summer, we would be selling the place out for weddings, but that's not our business plan. Weddings for us, they don't make money. They don't make sense because it interrupts weekend stays. So like, imagine a whole group checking in for Friday and Saturday night in August. What that does to a hotel is it prevents the 5-night stays or the 6-night or 7-night stays, the stay-throughs we call them, and it puts a lot of strain on the operating of a property because everyone's checking out one day for a full check-in the next day. So we actually, as a group, we just simply don't cater to groups like that. We're all about transient and leisure business, and not group business, wedding business at this property. The other thing I want to note for the board's knowledge is that this property, even though we do own 3 other properties in the neighborhood, this one is separate and distinct from Captain Lord, Captain Fairfield, and Captain Jeffords. This will be operated in isolation from those. It will be branded separately and will be operated separately. So there's not a risk of seepage or people from Captain Lord coming over to this property because it's on its own and distinct. I think, and this is just, shoot myself in the foot for this, but I don't believe that having one central fire pit will mitigate what you're trying to mitigate. I think at very least we should have a couple of different spots so you don't have 30 people gathered. You have a few people gathered around a fire pit. And if you reduce the number, I would compare it to this. If I was opening a restaurant and I only put 4 speakers in the restaurant, 1 in each corner, you would have to turn it up quite loud for everyone to hear it. But if I put 30 speakers in that restaurant, I could keep the level low so everyone could hear it, but at a lower level. Same thing here. If I put a fire pit for each cabin and it's for 2 people, then you don't have a critical mass of people gathering around one large fire pit, and you actually reduce and distribute the noise rather than concentrate it. So I'll be quiet now.
No, Rob, thank you so much because that really, really helps. So as we go back and look at this, you're right. You've got $500 to $600 probably a night, and that would be for 2 people. So you're right. You're not going to get, the wedding people and and obviously the spring season people. So just help me out with this. Those cabins, does it take, a couple, a couple with, let's say, 2 kids? Or does it take 2 families of maybe 8?
So Scott, we have 5 buildings, and in those 5 buildings, there are 11 doors or keys. And so each of those keys, out of those 11 rooms, guest rooms, they each can only accommodate 2 people. So it's double occupancy. So out of 11 keys, you have 22 people and 11 fire pits. So 1 fire pit for every 2 people. We will not rent to more than 2 people per room on the property, and there are 17 rooms or keys.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point to the board because you're not putting, some kid doesn't call up and say, oh, it's $500. Can we get 8 kids in here? Oh, by the way, we're all over 25, and we'll pay extra for each person. So that's a no.
Correct. It's
excellent. Thank you. That really helps out.
Rob, extend that vision now to the central fire pits. In other words, you've just provided a vision for the small ambiance makers for the external buildings. Why 4 central fire pits that seem to be there, at first blush, to be there as a magnet for groups?
Edward, that's a good question. And I'll start out by saying we would be open to reducing that with your guidance. One of the things with this property is we feel like what we want to do is provide people with the opportunity to have serenity and solace when they want it in their own space, but also be able to connect with other human beings when they don't, and not in a, again, not in a raucous way, but in a way where, you know, 5 or 6 people are sitting around a fire pit, meeting each other and having a communal experience. The reason I asked Steve to put multiple in here is because I feel like it's natural for people to gravitate towards other people, but I didn't want everyone on the property gathering around one. And so we wanted to provide a communal experience, but also make each section small enough so that you couldn't get a critical mass of people around one fire pit to create too much noise. But again, we're totally willing to reduce the number of communal fire pits. I just don't think that it will get to the place. I don't think it addresses the goal that you're trying to get to. 1 means more people around it. 4 means fewer people around each one.
And those central ones would be accessible to people who are staying in the main house.
Yes,
well.
and so we have 6 suites in the main house, and because they don't have their own private outdoor space,
Right.
we did want to provide some kind of outdoor experience for them as well.
Okay.
And the other thing I'd point out, just by the nature of the way that the property is designed, those 4 fire pits in the middle of the property are the most distant from our neighbors.
Right.
Said you had like 1 fire pit at the other ends, each of the other ends. I'm wondering, you know, I still have a problem with this. Why are there so many here?
It's an amenity for the individual cabins, Nina. It's like having a gas fireplace in your room, except part of the great summer experience in Maine is being outside. And so we wanted to give them that experience outside. Think of it like, have any of you visited the cottages at Cabot Cove or driven by?
Sure.
It's a beautiful little enclave of individual cabins, and this is similar to that. Each one has its own patio. We really want people to be able to be outside. Again, I don't know. I guess I don't have anything else to add to that.
So it would obviously be very unnatural to have somebody in the hotel walk over to one of those cottages and decide to use their fire pit. They just wouldn't do that.
There would be no way for them to do that. The switch for the fire pit will be inside the unit, so that if you were staying in the main building, you wouldn't have access to that fire pit. They're very private. The way that Steve has designed it, they're all shielded by plantings. Some are, if you look at the second building, you can see a fence that encloses that fire pit to give it more privacy. But the way that Steve has laid it out is to be intentionally private for each of those units. And so they're not designed for gathering, they're designed for sort of solitude.
Yeah, thank you.
I think when we here at the public meeting, I think it would be nice to have a sketch that would maybe deliver that message, that these are, you know, a private. I thought your analogy for an in-room gas fireplace was a good one, only outside on the other side of the screen door. And hearing it that way, you know, I'm coming around on that. Having said that, 4 in the middle is, I'm still hung up on that, and the thought that would be something more along the lines with what's going on at the other ends, maybe 1, and maybe gas, might be a move in the direction that I would support.
Edward, okay, so one of the ways that we look at this particular hotel is that, and maybe when you guys have driven by, you've seen we put in these very large windows in each of the cabins, is like the blend of the indoor and outdoor experience. And what we asked Steve to do was create an outdoor living room for each of the cabins so that people could exist inside and outside. like I said, I'm totally amenable to the idea of reducing the number of fire pits outside. Happy to nix the wood if you want. If we reduced it to 2, I think that would serve our same goal of creating, like, if you don't want to be part of the group, there's another option for you. So this is the fire pit that maybe rooms 1, 2, and 3 in the inn are hanging out at, but you don't want to be part of that. So
Yeah.
you go to the other one. Yeah, that would be more than fine with me.
I think,
I don't understand why they need a large fire pit then if they have their individual ones. It still doesn't make very much sense to me. And knowing the nature of people, if you have 2 or 3 people sitting around a fire pit, usually people gravitate to that fire pit. They don't start to say, oh, I want to have my own fire pit. If they wanted that, they'd stay near their cabin and use that fire pit.
Nina, there are 6 rooms in the main inn that don't have access to the private fire pits. I don't actually agree with the psychology that you're talking about. I don't. I think the reason people travel is to be with the people they're with. At least I travel with my wife, and I like to be with her and have my own time with her. But I do want the people who are in the main inn building to have access to that element as well. What are we looking at here, Steve?
This is kind of what I'm thinking of, with the little private fireplaces around the cottages. That helps, just kind of visualize. That's a wood one, but just to give you an idea of the scale of the space.
Yeah, and I think it was important to me to understand and maybe visualize that the central ones would largely not be used by the people who were couples in their own little havens, but by the people that were in the main building, and maybe occasionally by 2 couples came together. Again, why it seemed like 4 was overkill.
Guys, I'm going to be on the move in just a minute. I'm going to get back into the meeting on my phone. I just have another appointment soon, but I want to make sure that I'm available to you as we continue. And especially available to Katie and the other neighbors as we get into the public forum. So I'll be right back. If I get on my phone, will you guys let me back in?
No, we're going to keep you out.
I can't. It wouldn't be terrible. But, I'll talk to you in just a couple minutes. I'll be right back.
thank you.
All right, so, Larry, you
This is
got
George.
anything to say?
Before you open up, I'm sorry, my connection cut off.
Yes.
I want to point out that part of the fire pit issue, and I think was raised by some of the residents, is currently, if I'm a guest there, my focus is inward. It's in my room, it's my cabinet, it's in my suite. What we're doing is we're now taking people out of those and putting them all outdoors. And I think from a residential expectation, I may now have 20 or 30 people sitting outside where I didn't have those people before. So that is a change in character.
Yes, but it's also very internal. I mean, you got the cottages here blocking, so everything's internal to the site. And we do have 2 back in here on the backside of the cottage, but everything else is
I
internal
appreciate
to
your
the site.
assurances. I live across the street, 400 feet back in from a motel, and as they have shifted their activities outwards, I hear it a lot more.
Mhm.
I'm just pointing out, I understand the residents' concern.
Gotcha.
All right, anybody else have anything to say before we open up? the thing?
Yes,
Larry?
I have
John?
several thoughts.
Okay,
So, Steve, I appreciate the work you've put in on this layout. It looks very impressive. The thought that comes, the first thing that hit me though was, it seems to me that you have too many fire pits, one fire pit per location seems like it's going to actually provide quite an obstacle, an access obstacle. And I don't know if you've actually drawn a circle around the area that you're actually going to need for the fire pit, because it's not just the fire pit, it's obviously people sitting around the fire pit, I guess.
Yes, I have.
So the thought that occurred to me was, if you have that much area taken up, instead of a fire pit, wouldn't you want just like a little bistro table? And if you insisted on some sort of a heating element, maybe they've got a lot of variations of gas fires that go inside of various condo or apartment units that you could adapt for this. So my thought is that, to be honest, I prefer the gas-fired 1 or 2 central, central fire pits instead of a whole bunch of distributed ones. I heard all the arguments about why they're so beneficial, but is this, when this renovation is over, is this still just going to be seasonal operation, or is it going to be operated year-round?
I believe the majority of it is seasonal. I think he said there may be a couple that are year-round, but the majority of them are seasonal.
Okay, so well, my thought there was, if it's going to be year-round operation, then the fire pit would be covered in snow in the winter, would be less desirable in winters, which would enhance the idea that you might want to have an internal gas fire instead of an external gas fire. Anyway, so the substitution of some sort of a bistro table for the gas fire, for the individual gas fires, was something that occurred to me, and then concentrating on the sort of communal gas, a couple of gas fires in the middle. Which I don't know who mentioned it, but the existence of a gas fire does tend to attract people. So it would be sort of an opportunity for whoever's there to get together and talk to others. But anyway, that was my first thought. Eliminate so many of the individual gas fires. So then my second thought is that kind of goes along with what Nina had mentioned, that I have also walked by the site, and that is a big grassy expanse, which does go, there is quite a significant depression below the road level. And so at the moment you're proposing to cover it with asphalt, right? The parking area?
Correct.
Okay, so that's sort of the default position. But I got all those letters from abutters who are sort of alarmed at the idea of, instead of looking at it green, they would be looking at it asphalt. So, and it's just a thought, so is there any interest in substituting those turf pavers for asphalt? Turf pavers is those concrete pavers that have a void in the middle where you can put some dirt and grow grass. So that would, they still provide a parking area, but it doesn't, but it retains some element of green grass as a, did you want to think about the turf pavers?
Well, they don't perform well in the wintertime, with plowing.
They're going to plow it? Oh, but if it's seasonal, why would you plow it?
Well, some of it's not seasonal. So if they have to plow part of that, they will have to plow that lot, and it just doesn't perform well, those grass pavers.
Okay.
I thought that was a great idea. I love that. That would really be great for the trees.
Yeah. Well,
But
anyway.
I do understand plowing it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so you don't like that idea. So then
I like it. I just don't see it being a practical solution. I don't think it'll perform well. It sounds good in theory, but I honestly think it will, in the long term, it's going to just be.
Well,
it's gonna be
okay. This is just a thought. The snow plowing is quite destructive. I've stopped plowing. I've stopped having people plow my driveway because they wreck all sorts of stuff. And I have a concrete driveway. And I've had it snow blowed. And so, a snow blower, it's a little more expensive, but it causes a lot less damage. Did you want to consider the use of the turf pavers in conjunction with the snow blowing instead of plowing?
Well, it's the exposed grass is what the problem comes to be. When the grass is, because the turf pavers actually, it's not the plowing that damages it, it's the exposure to the cold weather. that the grass will not survive very well in the wintertime. So come spring, you're going to get a lot of dieback in that grass just from being exposed. And then how do you reseed it, and you're still trying to drive cars on it? It's just, that's where the issue arises.
You have to
Okay.
have grass there, why can't you have gravel in between?
What's that again?
Do you have to have grass there, why can't you have gravel in between?
It could be. I think it's still the same. It's still the same surface.
Larry, are you trying to solve the visual, what you perceive as the visual problem? Or are you
Yeah,
trying,
yeah, I was trying to solve the visual problem, you know, because,
because the other aspect to this that maybe is certainly is as important is the jeopardy that this parking lot might bring to the existing root system of the large trees.
absolutely. In fact, that's my sort of my lead into my next
Okay,
suggestion.
because I think
Which-
two of those are both germane.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, you know, I'm so glad you're going to meet with Nate Tucker, the Bartlett tree guy, because, I mean, I have experience on backfilling over tree roots, and the tree looks fine for about 5 years, then you have to cut it down because it's dead, because the roots just, it just has a negative impact on the roots. So I am actually concerned about filling that area to any significant extent. Or excavating to any
I would
significant extent.
say the neighbors would like the gravel look too. It looks very Maine.
Yeah.
Nina, could you comment on that? I mean, isn't being less impervious and water does get down to those roots?
Hello?
I've seen trees start to struggle just because soil has elevated around them. I've seen
Absolutely, correct. I've seen it, yeah. I've actually cut down some trees, not here, but elsewhere.
change things around a tree and it will kill it very fast.
Yeah.
And just changing the microenvironment, which you're going to do here, will have an effect on the trees, and you don't know really what it's going to be. I would want to hear from basically an arborist before I made any more comments on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, and by the way, his name's Noah.
Noah?
Noah, that's it, not Nate.
Noah.
Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Noah, okay. So, okay, so in another, okay, this is just another thought in attempt to assuage the visual aspects, okay? Because I noticed that that is a pretty big depression there. I mean, it really, I don't know, what's the change in grade from the road to the bottom of that area? It must be about 10 feet, huh?
Oh,
10
I
foot
don't-
of elevation drop.
I don't think it's that far.
It's pretty big.
Whoops,
I
it's not 10 feet.
don't know. I mean, it's,
Got the numbers on there.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4,
got it on
5 feet.
yeah, relative to what? Oh, I see the road. Okay, the road, okay. The road is at 27 and the bottom there is 20. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, 5 feet. Okay. So, okay, that would there be any interest in constructing, because you have a 5-foot elevation difference already, constructing some sort of a roof garden over the parking area so that you wouldn't have to, so that there would be an opportunity to preserve the appearance of greenery in that location. Of course, that would, what I'm talking about would be some sort of, piling with beams with one-way slabs supporting, some greenery. But, I know there's all sorts of designs that exist to make that work, but that would preserve the visual, the green visual appearance, and would tend to reduce the need to plow so much. Of course, you wouldn't be able to run that all the way out to the road. You'd have to start it maybe halfway back because of the, you still have to park below the elevated greenery area, but anyway, that thought occurred to me as a way to make the, retain the green image of that location.
Folks, so this is Rob. I'm back on. Thank you for your patience. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that on one side of our property, currently on the left, you're looking at an asphalt driveway. And on the right, you're looking at green space. And now we're just talking about flipping that. So we will have the green space on the left and the asphalt driveway on the right. So we're trading one for the other. And as Steve pointed out earlier, we're shielding this with 10 to 12 foot arborvitae, and there will only be the small entrance of the parking lot that you're going to see once everything's planted.
Oh, I see. So you're going to okay, provide some arborvitae as a block, visual blockage of the parking lot.
Exactly.
Okay, well, but okay, then looking at the plan, and we were talking about snow plowing. Where are you going? Where's the area that you'll store the snow?
Well, they would put the snow in this location here. And then if it gets to a point where they don't have places to put it, they'll have to haul it off.
Okay.
But, the intent is to push everything down at this location.
Okay, well, those are my three thoughts.
Okay,
Just keep them in mind if you want to follow through on any of them.
George, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, John, we haven't heard from you yet.
I'm fine. I have one question. Piling up the snow in a big year at the end of the parking lot, what is that going to do to drainage?
There's a drainage structure we got going right here. And then there's another one, I believe, right down here. So, if there's anything in the parking lot, that'll be collected there. And then, like I said, there's another structure right here. So water can just run down to this structure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I think we've been through the whole board at this point. So I guess no one else on the board wants to talk right now. I guess I can open up the public hearing. So if you wish to speak in the public hearing, please raise your digital hand.
We have 6 participants with raised hands. For the benefit of everyone, I am going to shut down the display that Steve has. It's causing issues with the audio for our broadcast. You guys, I think, are hearing it okay, but to make things best for our
we're not.
viewers at home, I'm gonna stop your sharing.
We were getting a lot of garbage.
Easier for me to see who has their hands up. We have lots of hands up. First, we have Paul and Julia Ann. You should be able to speak now, Paul and Julia Ann.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, identify yourselves, please.
My name is Paul and Julianne Labouve. We live right across from the Mainstay Inn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. So there was a lot of great points brought up tonight, and I think Mary brought up a lot of really good points with regard to the fire pits. We're very concerned about those fire pits, and because obviously we are like directly across from where all those activities would be occurring. Right now, as it is, the situation is very controlled, I would say, but in the future, I just don't know where it's going to go. So my concern is really that the modifications to the property are going to increase the volume of the volume of conversation during the summer months.
Okay, I think that Rob talked about that a bit. I don't know if you want to address that further, Rob.
No, I don't think so. Paul, I appreciate your comment, and certainly like I'd like to just reiterate that our intention is to be good neighbors, and we would be happy to have all of the neighbors have our general manager's phone number if there are ever challenges. But again, like our intention is for this to be a very high-end property that focuses on couples. Occupancy is limited to 2 people per room, which is less than it's historically been.
Yeah, I get that.
and-
You know, I get that, but you know, I mean, you know, obviously we live in the residential area, and this is kind of where I was going to go with the commentary too. Is that you know we live in the Kennebunkport residential area. It's not the commercial area. It's not, you know, it's not the, you know, it's not the B&B area, whatever. And so I think a lot of that has been conflated over the years to imply that, you know, these things should be allowed. So I'm not comfortable with having a lot of the I would say, you know, the grandfathered clauses, you know, kind of coming into effect in a way. Because I mean, I have plans for my residence, and you know, if I were to apply for a grandfather clause, I think I'd probably be denied. So where does you know, where does that stand? Because as a resident, I'm not comfortable with having exceptions being granted through you know, just history and not.
Paul, hey, I'm not this is Rob again. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been in the neighborhood since 2004 at Captain Fairfield Inn, and these are non-conforming uses that are allowed by the nature of history. We're not expanding the use here. We're actually reducing the use by reducing the occupancy of the property that used to have multiple beds in the rooms. And I think the simple nature of the ordinance is that we're not expanding use here. We're actually reducing the coverage. We're reducing the number of people who are going to be staying there. And I think the net will be a positive for the neighborhood. I can see your perspective though. So I want you to know that I respect it and understand it, and appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the fact that you've you know, looked into that, but I'm not sure that I understand that you know, the you know, the part of the plan is really to expand, you know, the building there and expand the lot. So I'm not really confident that the residents are going to be part of that. So
On non-conforming uses.
yeah, non-conforming uses, exactly.
What you're trying to get at here is that while he's reducing the number of people probably that are using the motel or whatever it is, the mainstay inn, he's sort of expanding in terms of he's encouraging people to be out of the buildings basically during the nighttime, use a fire pit, and the noise levels would be increased, and that is an use that's been dealt
That's a
with
big concern for us, is the noise level with the fire pits.
And I know that the courts have limited that in your Frost v. Lucy case,
And that's
to
part of the,
basically stopping the use after 9 o'clock. So,
Right.
that's something that we can consider as a planning board, and whether this is an expansion of use that would detrimentally affect the neighborhood. I think that's what we're
I
trying to
appreciate
do.
that you guys have taken that into account. That's awesome.
Nina and Paul, I don't disagree with you, and we would be very open to restriction on hours. Again, we believe that we can all coexist and make the neighborhood better and keep it as good as it is. So if 9 o'clock is the time that we turn the gas off, then it's the time we turn the gas off.
Well, that's what the court did in the Pivotal Maine case, which, all attorneys seem to bring up whenever we go to a conforming use and expansion of use. And, that was a particular hotel that started to have people in addition to the guests in the hotel, and expanding the use that way. It's something that we can consider. And you might want to consider, you might want to talk to neighbors about it and see what would be the best solution for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think that we've often, thought about the fact that there's people that are, kind of transient, and we love it. We love the fact that there are people here in town that come, and spend their summer here and everything like that. But, at the same time, we don't want to be totally inundated with noise.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we take the next person?
Nick Gear. Nick, you should be able to speak now.
And you can take Paul back
Great.
off.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Nick, we
Okay.
can.
Great. So I'm on Town Street, which, runs parallel to Main Street. We're behind the mainstay. We share a property line. If you were looking at your earlier plot plan, the cabin that is to the top left, which is currently proposing 2 fire pits behind the cabin, would be directly abutting my property. Those 2 fire pits would be approximately 35 to 40 feet from my back deck and family room. Okay. So for me, that's clearly the most egregious aspect of the plan. Those people would basically be living in my backyard. In general, we have found the mainstay to be an excellent neighbor. The guests traditionally have been quite quiet. They come in, they go downtown, they shop, they have dinner, they come back, they go to bed. What we're discussing now is something totally different. It's meant to be an outdoor activity zone. I can see that would be very appealing for people. It would be very appealing for me, coming up from Massachusetts to spend an evening with friends or a loved one, sit around the fire pit and talk until 2 or 3 in the morning. As a neighbor, not such a great thing to look forward to. So that's kind of where I'm at. I won't take up too much more time. I just think the impact of these changes goes way beyond some of the initial talk around reducing the number of individuals who are going to be staying there. I think we have to look at it much more broadly than the number of guests at any given time, because the impact, I think, for the neighbors is going to be huge.
Okay, thank you. I guess next.
We have Daniel Miles.
Well, I heard.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think the fire pits are a non-starter. Everybody pretty much agrees.
Hi. Can you hear me? I'm Andrea Miles using my husband's iPad.
Yes.
Okay. I am at 11 Town Street, so my backyard directly abuts the mainstay as well. So the cabin furthest, if I look out, it's right in my backyard. There's a fence. And I was just wondering, Steve, are you the planner for the whole landscape back there?
Yes, I am.
I would need to coordinate with you what you plan to do there because I'm making some changes on my property as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like some information as far as getting in touch with whoever I should be in touch with to discuss that. On another note, the fire pits, I have stayed at properties that have those little quaint gas fireplaces. That doesn't so much bother me. It usually is a place where you have a glass of wine with your loved one and quietly chat after dinner or before dinner. I think maybe a time limit of, 10 p.m. or something that, the town can agree on. I don't know if there's a noise ordinance, would be fine with me. I guess those are my concerns.
We have a fire pit.
And I also have a fire pit in my backyard. So I guess I really can't complain because we might have 5 people back there sometimes, 10 people, and we try to tone it down after 10 o'clock as not to disrupt the mainstay or our other neighbors. So those are my concerns, but my biggest concern would be, is there a fence possibly going to be coming across? I was concerned with looking out off my deck and in my backyard at a parking lot. But it looks like you're going to do a lot of re-landscaping, so that won't be obvious.
And if I could, I'm here too. You already have, the mainstay already has a fence because two of the lodges or the cottages are right, we're right behind you. I can walk through the mainstay and get into town. We used to sneak through when Walter said it was okay. But if maybe like Andrea mentioned, some coordination between us would be good because we're planning on expanding our property and we're wondering if we should extend the fence. It's to me, this isn't a financial thing. I'll do it if I have to, but I just want to make sure we coordinate so that it looks well.
Yeah, guys, let's coordinate, and you're welcome to sneak through anytime you want. So we can definitely make it work.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, how are we doing? Next.
We have 4 more. Next, we have a phone number, so please identify yourself. The number ends in 1957. You should be able to speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, board. My name is Greer Presley, and my family are the property owners at 38 Main Street, known as the Historic Cup and Saucer House. And we are the property directly abutting the Mainstay Inn and the relocated parking lot as proposed. And there have been a number of very excellent points made about the concerns regarding the multiple fire pits. But I would like to focus my remarks and concerns on the relocation of the parking lot, if I may. And frankly, we are concerned and disturbed by the proverbial worldview of this project and the proposed relocation of the parking lot on this property. If you listen to Mr. Blood's own words, it's clear he's talking about enhancing the experience for transient inn guests at the expense of a residential neighbor. And that is very, very concerning for us. And all you have to do is go over to our property and stand in our front yard or our driveway with their plans. And what you'll see is that right now, we are looking at a bucolic, passive use, pleasant green space. And they are talking about replacing that with an elevated parking lot of asphalt. And it completely changes the character of our quiet enjoyment of our property without any proposed mitigation for that negative impact whatsoever. If you look at their plans, I'm not seeing any proposed mitigation to our property. And again, just focusing on the relocation of the parking lot, they are talking about taking all of the undesirable elements of parking, be it noise or light or asphalt appearance, that is now shared by the cabins and their transient guests. And they're going to now hoist all of those undesirable elements onto a resident neighbor. And it's very intentional. Why would they want to move the parking from the cabins if it wasn't undesirable? And that's what they're doing here. And again, just to use Mr. Blood's own words, he's talking about creating serenity and solace for their guests. Well, at whose expense? At the expense of the resident neighbor. He was talking about, and I'm using his own words, creating an indoor and outdoor experience for their transient guests. At whose expense? At the expense of their resident's neighbor. So again, we're very disturbed by the overall worldview of this project. And the notion of enhancing a transient guest experience at the expense of an owner of an historic property directly next door. And I'm going to turn it over to my mother in case she has something else to add. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your concerns.
Thank you, the planning board and town staff, and happy St. Patrick's Day. I reiterate everything he said, but I will say one thing. We bought our home 13 years ago. We live in a landmarked home in Palm Beach, and we see developers coming in all the time. You give them an inch, they take a mile. And we also are very blessed to have been privileged to steward the Cup and Saucer home, and we bought it from the Litchfields. And we have gone to great extent to maintain the property and keep it authentic, rebuilding a beautiful English wall with the help of wonderful Brian Fairfield. And, you know, it seems that Mr. Blood is trying to create an ambiance of earth out in the woods. Well, he's not out in the woods. He's in the plop down right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The people across the street, although they might put the arborvitae hedge in, they're going to have cars coming in and out of there, and the lights are going to shine right into their home. Any screening of vegetation and fence that they might do does not really control the arc of the lights of the cars, nor, more importantly, the doors opening and shutting all day long and during the night. That is going to, our majority of our bedrooms line up against that driveway. And even though we have a driveway, we've landscaped it beautifully, as I'm sure that Mr. Doe could come up with a wonderful drawing of a driveway that is existing by the cottages. Why we have to custom make a parking lot to suit the cottages at our expense is unjust. And with my appreciation of the historic homes, and we are in the middle of it, I do think that they're being presumptuous of having designed the cottages with clear glass, thinking that this was going to be a railroad job through, which is they did not call us for one business of input. I do think that the noise, there's no way we can mitigate noise with car doors in and out right by our driveway. And the drainage issue is another concern. And to know that they're even elevating it more, I've been living there and seeing the pools of water pools just on a normal given day. They elevate that driveway. Who knows? But my main concern is they have taken a bucolic passive use of space. And instead of having it, we've used to love seeing the guests sitting outside in their Adirondack chairs. You know, it was old school enjoyment of Maine. We don't need earth. We don't need the ambient, even earth, the cabins there do not, they might have outdoor showers. They do not have fire pits. So we do not need to create as a residential neighborhood, earth in the middle of our town. And they don't have the luxury of being out in the woods like earth. And they, you know, you give people an inch, what they have existing parking that they've always had has worked beautifully. The parking space has been spread out, so no one has had to take the impact. The cottages have been the buffer for the cars because they stand in the way of the property owners adjacent to them. And the front parking has been a buffer for us because we haven't had to hear those doors open and close all night long. And we do hear everything. So as being good stewards of an historic home, we are highly, highly outraged that this plan could possibly be approved. And I'm sure the Board of Selectmen would have my back on this since I've been spending a lot of time with them with short-term rentals. So I hope that you really weigh heavily our concerns. We're property owners. We intend to keep our property, we're planning to keep this home in our family. Our children are getting ready to inherit it and our grandchildren. And we're not transients. We're long-term Kennebunkport. We might not be able to be there all year, but 10 months of the year we can slip in and out, we do. So I hope that we have your ear, and I respect your judgment and hope you all will vote the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Could I just hop in for 1 second? It's Rob. And say to the Priestleys, I'm sorry we're on the other side of this, and I want you to know that I believe you've done an amazing job with your home, and I've enjoyed watching the stone wall come together, and I enjoyed having a wonderful Kennebunkport Festival dinner in your home one year. And our intention is not to erode any value or experience that you've had with the house. I hear your points. I think that it's important for Steve and I to take those into careful consideration. We're willing to make modifications to the plan to make sure that we can mitigate any of the concerns that you have. I do want to go back and point out that we are also stewards of historic homes. I've been in town since 2004, and we're not, the reality is we all are in a neighborhood where there are inns, and we moved into that neighborhood when they were there. And I happen to be more concerned about the proliferation of 10-bedroom Airbnbs in our neighborhood than I am about transient guests in inns. But please don't hear rigidity in our plan. We do want to relocate the parking. We do feel like we'll be more appropriate to consolidate it rather than have it spread out like a motel. But we're certainly willing to look at any kind of mitigation things that are necessary. And I apologize to the board members and to the rest of the community. I have to step off the call. But Steve, if you could just continue in my place, that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Okay, who else do we have?
We have three more. Next, we have John Ripton. John, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Hi, I'm John Ripton. It's good to see you all tonight, and I appreciate the the comments that have been made so far, both by the public and watching Steve and the rest of you talk about the plan. I did meet with Steve about an elm that we wanted to plant in front of the Mainstay Inn where sugar maple had been brought down probably about a week ago, perhaps, or less than a week ago. In the interim, I did, Steve, by the way, just send you an email a while ago, just before this meeting, but it took a few days for me to get around to taking a look at the situation. I went down quite immediately. I didn't realize where the parking lot was going to be. I was more focused on our campaign for planting trees this spring. But when I did realize, exactly where that parking lot was going to be, a lot of concerns began to rise to the fore. One is we have lost 20 trees in the last 18 months. 10 of those have been elms. We inject that elm at the side of the Mainstay Inn. The town is putting money into the preservation of that elm. Any soil removal, as I understand it from arborists, any soil removal will disturb the roots. Any added soil will create compaction, soil compaction. This over time will definitely have an impact on that elm. That is one of the most stately elms in the town. And right next to it is a plan to build a parking lot. I don't know how many of you have seen how many elms have been affected by the compaction that takes place when macadam, even if this is gravel, when macadam nears the tree itself. You can just drive along the street and see it. We've lost several elms in the last 18 months, and likely due to the fact that there's been a lot of soil compaction, a lot of displacement of water. Even gravel compacts. And we believe that this is not a plan that is going to be to the benefit of our interests as the Shade Tree Committee. What I did for the last few days was to really poll the Shade Tree Committee with a statement that to the effect of what I've just said, and everybody agrees full-heartedly that this is not a plan that we should go forward with. And I want to make that very clear. And it's because we are trying to preserve these trees that we need to take a very firm stand on this. We are losing trees. That's why we're doing a campaign this spring to plant trees. That's why I met with Steve in the first place, to put an elm in front of the MAPE. And we're doing a cost share program with this. We're sharing the costs with residents when they're in the ROW, the right of way. We're very serious about maintaining the quality of the canopy here in town. And I mean, even from a broader ecological point of view, there's so many things that are problematic with the plan, including use of gas. I mean, if you've looked into that, I mean, methane from the ground all the way to the fire pit is a real big problem, and for carbon release into the environment. About 2% of gas, of methane, about 2% of natural gas is burned off or released as methane gas. So I'm not going to go into the fire pits. That's not my point. But my larger point is the ecological point of the canopy of this town. And in the long run, that's a very, very significant contribution to the town. When we talk about tourism and people coming to the inn, this is a town that is well known for its tree-lined streets. And I do not, as a spokesperson for the committee, and I know that I'm speaking on behalf of the committee because we've gone over it the last 3 or 4 days, we just can't approve of this parking lot being on that side of the building. Moreover, the runoff, we already see the runoff going into the neighborhood into the neighbor's house next door. There's another elm down back there that is within 30 feet of the property, likely probably within 35, 40 feet, maybe less of the proposed parking lot. There's just too many, ecological matters beyond the tree that is a problem. So I'll leave it at that. And I guess you kind of understand the shade tree's position.
Thank you very much.
John, this is Ed. Just to clarify your concern, the Shade Tree Committee's concern is for the one elm that is jeopardized by the parking lot?
The one elm that is jeopardized by the parking lot, and as I understand it, there may well be other trees that are removed in the background of that, in the backside of the parking lot. I don't know that for certain, but there are, I believe, a few spruces out there that are sizable. They are not tagged. We do not watch over them. But once again, they are part of the ambiance, the canopy of the town. And these are important things to consider, in our opinion.
Right,
And we are most concerned about the elm, yes.
And that's one of the two trees that are along that property line, Steve Doe, is that correct?
I'm only aware of the one elm. That is the one.
And where is it?
It's on the side of the parking lot, between the parking lot and the main inn.
There's a second elm to the right of the parking lot on the property of the people that just spoke. That is about 30 feet from where the parking lot will be, 30 to 35 feet. Already there is a ditch that runs through there where the runoff takes place. My guess is that there'll be significantly greater runoff. And there is an elm back there as well.
Yeah, I don't see the runoff being an issue because it's all contained in the parking lot and going right to a drainage structure. So there won't be additional runoff.
So again, John, that the specific concern is the first elm that you're most concerned with, understanding there might be another or others, that one elm is located where exactly?
I would say it's located, depending on the size of that parking lot, it will be located perhaps within 15 feet of it, 20 feet of it.
On the mainstay property or on
the mainstay property at the crest of the little rise there, I believe, where the parking lot is in the lower end, down where they have a garden planted, and it's approximately, I think that parking lot will probably be within 15 feet of the elm. Now, Steve may have another.
Near where the fire pits are proposed.
No, the parking lot.
The parking lot. The parking lot is our concern, our primary concern.
No, I'm trying to understand where the elm tree is. I still can't picture.
If you drive into the parking lot, the
proposed parking lot.
The proposed parking lot, and you look to the left, the elm is right there. It's probably 30 feet in from the road, and I would guess probably going to be within 15 feet of the parking lot. Although I could be corrected.
Its root system is under where that parking lot is proposed.
Oh, absolutely.
That's correct.
And that's the jeopardy.
Yeah, usually you think of the root system as, at least as I understand it, extending where the canopy extends, at least. And
Sure.
Maybe more, but that gives you a rough idea. And that canopy is extending over the area where there would be parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So John, this is Larry Simmons. I just wanted to, I heard all your comments, and I know you're concerned about the trees and the relocation of the parking lot. So after Stephen meets with the arborist sometime next week, if they come back with, I don't know, some conditions or clear distances or something, which would allow at least a partial or some measure of the parking lot to be relocated to the proposed new location, would you, is that going to be okay with the Shade Committee, or is the Shade Committee saying that they don't want any new parking area anywhere near those, that elm tree and that, anywhere in the, under the existing canopy over there on that, that green area. And and so are you saying you don't want to allow relocation of the parking lot at all?
We believe that the parking lot will disturb the elm, and that in the long run, as someone mentioned before, and you may have mentioned it, we have a tree there that in 5 years, who knows what will happen to it. Yeah, we really feel that the parking lot will disturb that elm, and perhaps others, I don't know, but definitely the elm.
Okay, so I guess the next step on this is Steve's going to meet with the arborist and then see what recommendations come out of that meeting in terms of
Right.
how that might affect any new parking area.
Yeah, I don't know if Steve is meeting with Noah tomorrow or if it's next week now. I've communicated with Noah. I'm not certain as to when that meeting will be, if it's tomorrow, Steve, or not. It was initially set for tomorrow, Thursday. If it's next week, I plan to be there as well.
Yeah, I haven't got a confirmation on it yet, so.
Okay.
Okay, so that's great. So John and Noah and Steve are going to get together. And Steve is going to coordinate that, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
I have a question for Steve. So Steve, I have to believe, can you folks hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just, okay, it said internet loss. Steve, I have to believe that you and Blood must have a second plan. And I'm just thinking, if you have the driveway where it's coming in now, if you could, just like the Fairfield Inn does, where it parks, the Captain Fairfield Inn, couldn't you put more of your driveway almost against the side of the mainstay, and perhaps instead of making it in pavement or use the broken up seashells, which looks very much like a main, and stay away from the other side and just expand that parking lot, and perhaps make the whole thing the little shells, but use more along where it is now up to the mainstay house as you move backward, and have maybe some lots there, informal lots. Have you thought of that?
We haven't. This was the only plan we had. So I think I'm sensing a lot of pushback from a lot of folks. And I think I'm just gonna need to, talk with Rob on this.
Because the elm trees are such a big deal.
Yes, and I think, meeting with the arborist is kind of key. And then talking with Rob about, some of the things we've heard tonight. And
Yeah. So I think we're going to continue the
yes,
the public hearing to another time. And and hopefully we'll hear more about how the Noah meets with John and Steve and figure out what's happening there.
Yep.
So beyond that, do we have other people who still need to talk today? Have we gotten enough talking done for today's meeting, and then we'll be continuing the public hearing in 2 weeks?
We have two more blue hands. I don't know if you want to hear them now or later.
Sure, you can leave John on, but add another person.
All right, we have someone labeled as Bev Rod. You should be able to speak now.
Good evening. This is Greg and Beverly Rodiger. We're at 28 Main Street. And I've been coming to Kennebunkport for over 50 years and know the town well. And I love the mainstay. It's a great location. And we really want to try and keep it that. And especially in the small living quarters that we have in town. I had a couple of questions, maybe quick questions for Steve. Number one is grilling. Are there any grills, outside grills planned?
No. Nope.
And the other question I had along those lines were a restaurant and a bar. Is that something that you're going to have inside the main location?
I'm not aware of one. I mean, if there's an existing one, that would stay, but they're not allowed to expand that. So I guess I defer to Werner, but I'm not aware of anything like that.
The current use is bed and breakfast, right? So they would only have the breakfast piece of that.
Yeah.
But Werner, please tell me I'm wrong or not.
Sure. Yeah. No. It's my understanding that they're able to serve food to guests, but it's not an amenity that's open to the public.
That would also assume that they would not be able to have events, catered events or something in this nice little area that they're building back in there. Or
Well, I don't think it precludes them from having an event, like any other property would. Certainly we know we have hotels in town that, on occasion have a tent out in the backyard, for occasions. So this doesn't preclude them, from doing that. Where,
I don't think it. Yeah, it also is not designed to accommodate a tent, because I had asked Rob about that early, and it's not what he's trying to do here. He's trying to keep these, as he talked about, very passive and quiet.
The last question I had goes back to, again, site coverage and impervious surface. And I'm just trying to get my hands around this. I understand from the meeting, the 4,000 square foot decrease in parking, but I'm still going back to this drainage analysis, the stormwater analysis, which says in black and white that the project will increase 2,000 square feet of impervious area. And I'm just having my trouble wrapping my hands around that how with 2,000 more square feet of impervious area, that isn't going to affect the flow of water there. And in also along the lines of that too, Steve, would be, I know you keep on saying there's a drainage system there. That building's awfully old. Does anybody have any idea where that drainage goes?
Yes, our company did some work quite a few years back on a drainage system that ties into this, goes down Main Street and ends up down in Dock Square. So this drainage system, coming from the south, there's a kind of a ditch per se, or swale that enters our site and then enters into a culvert, or a pipe system, and that goes completely underneath our property and across our property, goes across the lot to the north, and then angles back down into North Street, or Main Street. So our system, our drainage is actually tying into that existing drainage system.
You're sure of that?
Pardon?
You're sure of that?
Yes. Yeah, we have actually drawings of that old drainage system.
And then can you just address again the 2,000 square foot increase of impervious? I just can't figure that out.
Yeah, I talked about that early in the meeting. There was a decrease in the parking lot of about 4,000 square feet. But we also have all these walkways that we've added, which is where the increase of 2,000 comes from. But currently, as you see the parking lot, all that runoff goes directly into that storm drain system. There's no buffers or anything from when the water hits that parking lot. It just goes straight to the drainage system. With the new plan, we're incorporating pathways. We're breaking up the path that the drainage takes to the drainage structures by creating landscape areas and buffer areas so that the water has a longer route to get to the drainage structure, so it has a chance to percolate into the ground. So while we're increasing lot coverage, we're actually decreasing the water going off the site. And that shows up in the calculations on that stormwater report.
I guess the only suggestion might be is maybe some of the pathways, if you could make them gravel or something, so they're more pervious. That might be the only thought.
Yeah.
We're downhill from this, and I'm nervous as can be. And we have some of those elm trees on our property. We already have some occasional water issues, and this just seems like an awful lot of an additional issue that might happen. So
Yeah, all the paths will be gravel, which helps slow the water down too.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So any more hands raised?
Last we have someone labeled as MD. You should be able to speak now.
Yes, hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
This is Michelle Draghetti. I live directly across the street from the mainstay, and I'll keep my comments brief because I have written you all a letter, and I've been very appreciative of the comments that I've heard tonight, and appreciative of the mainstay wanting to work together with the neighbors. But I will say, you know, we are residents, we are full-time residents, we are raising our family here. We have children who go to school here. We all get up very early in the morning, and to have a property across the street from us that, you know, has basically been contained to inside, except when they sit on the porch and during the day in the good weather and have their breakfast, to turn that into an indoor-outdoor use property is absolutely an expansion of the use. And the one thing that no one is talking about is that these fire pits are used at night. This is nighttime activity we're talking about, not the middle of the day. So in the summer, and let's also be honest, we've all been to places, or most of us have, that have beautiful fire pits. We all want to sit out there at night. We'll sit out there in April all the way through the end of October because it's nice to sit around a fire pit. So I have major concerns about all these fire pits where people are going to gather. I'm not as concerned about the small ones, but I still think that if I've got 12 people sitting out there all at the same time, having a nice talk around their fire pit, that sound's going to carry, and we're going to hear that. And if they're doing it after dinner, late at night, that's going to carry. The bedrooms are in the front of my house. My children need to sleep. My husband and I get up at 5:30 in the morning. This is a residential neighborhood. So I think we have to be very careful about how much we allow that. And I'll also say that the Captain Lord is behind me, and I did not know they had a fire pit. And if Lark put that fire pit in, they haven't had any guests since they bought the property, hardly. They've had hardly any guests. So to say that that hasn't been a problem is a big misrepresentation because they've had almost no one staying there. I know because I can see when their parking lot's full. So I don't know about the Fairfield. I don't know where that fire pit is either. But I just wanted to say that I'm super concerned about that. I'm so happy that John came on and talked about the trees because my other big concern, the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, we're going to lose this beautiful canopy of trees. And some of them, they're not all elm trees, but they still create a beautiful shade canopy. They protect us from the wind. It makes for a lovely green space. And I understand that there's some beautiful new green space planned, but I'm sure none of it is old growth, giant, tall trees that are going to really provide shade and a real canopy. All these improvements are designed for for the guests of the inn. Nothing is good for the neighborhood here as far as I'm concerned. And my last point is simply the light pollution, not only the noise pollution, but the light pollution. That parking lot's going to go in. They've got to light it. Now I've got more lights shining right directly into my windows, up into my bedroom windows. Every car that comes out of there at night, the headlights are coming in my windows. The mainstay's got plenty of parking. They've got plenty of space. They've got a beautiful area they can work with. They don't need to put their parking lot over there, and they definitely don't need those fire pits. And I really encourage the board to, sort of look at the code that basically states if you are, making, I'm sure I don't have to read it to you, I'm sure you know about it, but, impacts on the neighborhood in terms of noise and glare and fumes from the fire pits and everything else, that alone, never mind the elm trees, would be enough to stop this from happening. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we're done with I'm going to ask for a motion to continue the public hearing to the next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, so I'm in favor of that. And Nina? In favor of moving it to the next week, right?
Yes.
She nodded her head.
She nodded her head, okay. Okay, Scott, Ed,
In favor.
and Larry are both.
In favor,
good.
yeah.
Okay, so we will then take this up next time. Hopefully we'll have more input from the shade tree issues by then, and I'd like to, ask Werner for a second relative to, is this a change of use? To change from basically everybody sits, the last caller suggested that the indoor-outdoor aspect becomes a change of use for the hotel. And I don't know that is, but there's the magic word.
Well, I'll start with a disclaimer of saying that I'm not an attorney either, but generally speaking, when we look at the use of a property, it's the use of the property overall, so, the use of the property, is most definitely, we know that it's a grandfathered in, with, whatever number of rooms that it has. And that applies to the property as a whole. Now, suggesting that having guests sitting outside in the backyard is an expansion of use, I don't know. I would not give you a definitive, on saying that that's a change of use or an expansion of use by encouraging guests to sit out in the backyard.
That's debatable, because what if they put up a movie theater out there? That'd be definitely a change of use.
Yeah.
But that's not being proposed.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, understood. But that's
But a
not
lot of chairs outside would be.
Or live music.
Right.
Yeah, live music would definitely be a change of use.
So keep in mind, there's a difference between change of use and expansion of use. And I think, what you're, the question that you have to struggle with is expansion of use, not necessarily change of use.
Yes.
Can I offer an additional thought on that along the lines of what Werner, you're saying? But one of the things that's unique here, to me, the most important thing is that this is a disallowed use in the village residential area today. The land use ordinance would prohibit someone from opening a motel or a B&B in the village residential area. This is a grandfathered use. It is non-conforming. The question for us is, are the changes that are being made going to increase the non-conformance?
Correct.
Well, whether it's expanding the use or changing the use, are these changes going to increase the non-conformance, the impact on the neighborhood, which is what we've been hearing about? And at least from my view, that's what we need to wrestle with. We need to make sure this isn't a motel that is more impactive on the neighborhood than it currently is.
And are separate issues that also have to be considered together as a whole. Let's say that the plan were exactly the way it is now, but there were no fire pits. We might look at this very differently. Let's say that they maintained the parking over next to the cottages, but added in fire pits. There'll be one issue. We have multiple things going on here at the same time. One is the parking. The other one is, as I said earlier, and it's been reiterated, we are moving what has been an indoor focused facility into an outdoor focused facility, and that changes the residential area.
Again, I'm just offering the thought that as we look at the land use ordinance and look at the planning board's charter, what we're allowed to consider, what we should be focused on is this going to increase the existing non-conformance? The non-conformance is grandfathered. Motel is allowed, given its current impacts. Are these changes going to be a significant increase in the non-conformance, or is it going to decrease the non-conformance? That's what I'm trying to wrestle with.
And it seems by definition, they've decreased non-conformance by decreasing the amount of parking area. And have they also decreased the number of, how do you measure it? Beds, keys, doors, fewer people?
There's some
No.
things that have been reduced is what I'm hearing. Say again, Werner, they haven't?
No, like, so the number of rooms has not been reduced. And whenever we look at, when we look at these, we look at it based on the number of rooms.
Okay. The number of guests, has that been reduced?
It's not a metric that we use in the land use ordinance. So whenever you look at a hotel, motel, B&B, or an inn, the metric that you're looking at there is the number of rooms. That's what'll drive the parking requirements. And that's what'll drive the classification from a zoning perspective. Whether it's a hotel, whether it's an inn, whether it's a B&B, it's the number of rooms.
There's another issue that I didn't hear brought up, and I don't know if it fits into this conversation, but where parking has been at a premium in this town, and we have, as citizens, have paid to, create parking areas and monitor those parking areas. The mainstay is claimed by eminent domain parking areas with signage that may or may not actually be theirs. Should those signs come down? I mean, that's a code enforcement thing. That's a separate conversation, I guess.
To me, they're grandfathered.
Then if they're grandfathered, reduce the parking size by 5 spots.
No, so let me, I'll add a little bit of detail into this. So first of all, the mainstay has not made an eminent domain claim to those spaces.
I don't even know what that word means, but I like saying.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you normally you need a lot of paperwork to go along with that.
And a guy named Eminent.
That's right. Yep. And so, but what you have there, and from I've looked at some older pictures, some older street view images, and what it appears, what it appears to have occurred is that the previous owner, had a lot of just these little signs along the lawn there that said parking for mainstay. Yeah. And you do have a very wide paved shoulder there. So, but what's important to note is that there are no, I don't believe there's any spaces that are actually marked out there. And whenever you look at the town's ordinance that regulates parking, gets very specific in terms of which streets, where you can park on which streets. And so when you look at Main Street, the description of Main Street, that particular area hasn't been identified as one for on-street parking. So, the short story is that previous owner should have never been parking there in the first place. But we do have some odd circumstances in town where there is on-street parking, in particular on Main Street, that is designated for individual properties. And so exactly, that's the library. The library actually has written into the description, has a number of spaces that are specifically designated for the library.
Yeah.
So I did the research and looked, I could not find such an agreement that had been made for the mainstay.
If I hate to interrupt, but I actually have to attend another planning board meeting in Booth Bay. And I was hopeful, and I got to be on now. So if you don't mind, I'd like to remove myself and see you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks, Steve.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Wow. Back-to-back planning boards.
Oh, I know.
Guys,
Thank you.
all the luck. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Werner, just a follow-up to that. Isn't it akin to what we're doing over at the Nonantum though on Ocean, where their parking lot uses the right-of-way right out to the street? In fact, remember when we talked about whether we wanted to put barriers up, and we ended up making them removable because the town has to plow there in the winter, and because it was a good use of the.
Of course, I know they never put them up.
It helped an important business in the town, and it's always been done that way.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, what you have, I think the difference that you have there at the Nonantum is that you have one big massive curb cut there at the Nonantum.
Yeah.
that is a pull in and a pull out, and that's
Oh,
not
yeah,
the,
yeah.
that's not the same situation. That's not the same situation that you have here,
Right.
where you had these parallel spaces that were,
just-
that were designated.
I just meant in the sense of making a concession to an important business.
Yeah, yeah, and
Pharmacy has 15-minute spots.
I don't think that would work at the motel.
The motels it might.
Right.
Whoa, that's not.
Yeah. So with all that said, I mean, if there was a desire on the part of the property owner to claim parking spaces over there, there'd be a process that they would have to go through outside of the planning board to be able to.
Who would that go to? The selectmen?
That would go through the selectmen. Yep.
If they could claim 5 spots there, it reduces the size. They could probably cut down that half of the parking lot that borders over against the elm on the abutting property.
That's a thought.
Potentially.
Good idea, George.
It does.
Takes away from the town, though.
Well, there's
not
no,
using it.
There's no spots over there. That's
It's an accounting issue.
Yeah.
A clever one.
Yeah. So that would be the process. They would have to approach the Board of Selectmen, and there would have to be a modification made in that portion of the ordinance that designates, where parking occurs on what streets.
Oh.
I mean, everyone in town assumes that those spots belong to them right now anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
No,
yeah.
well, I mean,
Else wants to
remember,
park there. Do you want to park there? I don't want to park there.
well, the selectmen are going to not want to give away town property.
No, they wouldn't be giving it away. They'd be allowing a use of it that no one else is using right now.
99-year
Well,
lease
you might,
like
hey,
Hong Kong.
In order to
could
save
Warner comment on that?
in order to save an elm tree. Potentially.
Yeah. Again, that would be something that the property owner would need to approach, the Board of Selectmen for, and there would need to be weigh-in from Public Works and the police department, on that piece as well.
So to George's question, it probably wouldn't happen in a month's time, but it would be something that the sooner you started, the sooner you would potentially have it done.
Correct. Now don't take this as gospel, but I believe that ordinance can be modified by the Board of Selectmen without a town vote. If that's the case, I don't have it pulled up in front of me and haven't read it lately, but there's a different process if it goes through a town vote or if it goes to through the Board of Selectmen. If it goes through the Board of Selectmen, you've got a shorter time frame, for that type of a modification. Obviously,
Quickest time frame on that? 2 months?
I don't see where it would take any longer than that. I mean, you have a site plan that's already prepared, so it's an easy visual. I will say that, my concern would be, you add those spaces in and it helps alleviate some of the numbers, but what you now have is you have this additional curb cut and, by formally parking vehicles there now, there's a potential site distance question that just has to be addressed.
Are people parking there now, or are they just coming up to check into the inn? I've never really paid attention.
They park there.
They just park there.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I can, that could make a set of precedents, because if you look at those and they look dedicated to the pharmacy, the Colony Pharmacy.
Yeah.
But they're not. And, the owner will say, no, that's actually the town, they put their 15 minutes there, but it's not dedicated to my property.
Right. But that's what it's for.
So they wouldn't, that wouldn't obviate the need for a new parking area. It doesn't solve the problem, but it
it might break it a little bit.
Yeah, it could, whatever, who knows what the arborist is going to come up with, but I was going to ask you, Werner, now Steve unfortunately dropped off the call, but would you be comfortable at least sharing with him that we had this conversation, or pointing him back to look at the video recording so he's aware that at least the spot has been put out there, and that there's some skepticism about it, but something to keep in mind.
So
Yeah, I mean,
parking side of the equation, it still doesn't change the fire pit side of the
No,
equation.
I understand.
Yeah, I think.
Nina, we can't. Nina, we can't.
Nina, I think Nina's saying something, but Nina, your voice is very faint, so we're not always.
Your volume
Okay, am I better now?
a little bit.
A little bit. We'll be quiet and listen.
Well, one, it's a moot point whether you put parking spaces in there. If you look at the way they want to design the parking lot, it will still, even if you cut half of it off, it will affect the elm. Okay, so I don't even think you have to bring that up to an arborist. That's pure speculation. And if you set that precedent and you start setting it all over town, we're gonna have a real parking problem all over town.
Okay, fair point.
I will say, just in out of respect for the applicant, we should, the discussion on the project should probably make an effort to include them.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, Werner needs to give us, the rest of the group, an update on 24 Ocean Ave.
Sure. Yeah. So at our last meeting, we looked over the application from Mr. Schmalo to convert his convert Union Square into residential mixed use. And what I discovered is that ultimately, Dock Square wasn't included in the warrant article when we created residential mixed use. So I had a conversation with town manager and the Board of Selectmen about the thought and the possibility of crafting a warrant article that would add residential mixed use to the Dock Square zone. We already have a number of those types of buildings in Dock Square already, that are this combination of residential on the second floor with commercial on the first floor. So the selectmen were agreeable to that, and so I'm in the process of crafting the language for the warrant article revision based on what we've seen so far.
One thing, this one asks, I think the way the warrant, the way it reads right now is you only have 2 apartments per building.
Yeah.
And only 1 building per site. So this is sort of 2 buildings with 2 apartments, and there might be a little tweak to the words there too.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No, I've looked at that, and I'll have some language amendments that will address that as well.
Cool.
That's a great decision.
And so that way it's a much cleaner solution. You could try to go through this iteration. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, in Dock Square, a 2-family dwelling is a permitted use in Dock Square. Obviously commercial, is a use in Dock Square. But it's, to try to combine, the 2 within the ordinance, within principal buildings, it's just neater and cleaner, where we already have this standard that's written up, to get that added to the Dock Square zone as a conditional use.
Also, interesting thing, the warrant article said it was being changed for Cape Porpoise Square, but the actual land use ordinance didn't end up saying that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you ought to add it to Cape Porpoise Square as long as you're fixing things.
Yep. Yeah, I noticed that was not in there as well. So, but yeah, so that's our thought process on that, and then we'll just we'll make sure that that they're up and ready to go for that first meeting after the June warrant, provided that the voters approve that change.
So in that case, it'll be showing up in the minutes as withdrawn for now.
Well, again, that is up to the applicant, and I've suggested to them that they withdraw their application, at that point. I mean, ultimately, somebody can insist on going through the whole process with the board. Ultimately, I think I know what the answer would be, and that would be an unfortunate process to go through, especially whenever we have a plan that seems to be agreeable, to the board, to the planning board, and also to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, so whatever is the right procedural thing.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Okay, super. Well, then I just need one more motion. How about a motion to adjourn here? Someone can do that.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Yay.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks.
Right, bye-bye.
All right.